we're embarking on an exploration of the life and philosophy of Plato, the brilliant student of Socrates and a towering figure whose influence still resonates through Western thought. In our previous episodes, we dove into the enigmatic world of Heraclitus and the probing mind of Socrates. This time, we turn to the man who transformed Socratic questions into a comprehensive philosophical system, shaping metaphysics, ethics, politics, and education for millennia to come. For the next few minutes, we'll recreate the historical climate of ancient Athens, dramatize Plato's formative experiences, and peek into his revolutionary ideas like the theory of forms, the allegory of the cave, and the founding of his school, the Academy. So sit back, imagine the marbled walkways of classical Greece, and let's journey together through the life and legacy of Plato.
Picture Athens in the late 5th and early 4th century BCE, a city recovering from the ravages of the Peloponnesian War. The once mighty democracy had been humbled, and political strife ran high. Against this turbulent backdrop, the philosopher Socrates was tried and executed in 399 BCE, leaving behind a devoted circle of followers, one of whom was Plato. Plato was born around 428 BCE into an aristocratic family. According to tradition, his father traced his lineage to the legendary King Codrus, and his mother's side claimed descent from the great lawgiver Solon. Young Plato grew up amidst the intellectual vibrancy of Athens, absorbing the cultural and political upheavals of his day. He studied music, poetry, and gymnastics, standard education for an Athenian of high birth. Legend suggests he initially aspired to write tragedies. However, his encounter with Socrates changed the course of his life forever, reorienting his passion toward philosophy. Imagine the teenage Plato wandering through Athens' bustling agora, absorbing the scene. Tradesmen hawking wares, statesmen and sophists debating, and in the midst of it all, a barefoot, snub-nosed figure named Socrates. When Plato would finally engage in Socratic dialogues, his path would be set. In his late teens or early 20s, Plato became a close follower of Socrates. The pair formed a bond of mentor and disciple, an intense relationship rooted in philosophical inquiry. Socrates challenged the conventional wisdom of Athens, and through him, Plato learned the power of relentless questioning. Socrates insisted that the greatest pursuit was knowledge of virtue, a standpoint that would permeate Plato's later works. But then came 399 BCE, a turning point for Plato and for Athens. The city-state, already exhausted by war and political strife, turned on Socrates, accusing him of impiety and corrupting the youth. Socrates was found guilty and executed by drinking hemlock. This death of Socrates deeply shook Plato. He was disillusioned with Athenian politics. How could the democracy he cherished execute the man he regarded as the city's wisest thinker? Plato withdrew from public life, perhaps fleeing the city temporarily to process this trauma. From the flawed democracy that killed his teacher. This sowed the seeds for his eventual creation of the Republic, a dialogue devoted to defining justice and the ideal state. In the years following Socrates' death, Plato embarked on extensive travels. The exact timeline is debated, but tradition suggests he visited Megara, possibly studied with the Pythagoreans in southern Italy, and journeyed to Cyrene and Egypt. The Pythagoreans believed numbers underpinned reality, deeply influencing Plato's ideas about ideal forms. Their sense of an eternal, unchanging reality complemented Socrates' push for universal definitions. Plato's travels likely exposed him to oligarchies, monarchies, and different cultural norms, fueling his comparative analysis of governance forms. By around 387 BCE, Plato returned to Athens and founded the Academy. This school would thrive for centuries, shaping generations of philosophers, including Aristotle. The Academy is regarded as the Western world's first higher learning institution, and its curriculum included mathematics, astronomy, music theory, and, of course, philosophy. Dialogue is emphasized over static instruction, reflecting the Socratic spirit. So imagine a vibrant intellectual community. Young scholars discussing geometry proofs, philosophical puzzles, and the nature of the cosmos late into the night. This was the Academy, a living testament to Plato's commitment to rational inquiry. Plato wrote extensively, primarily through dialogues, featuring Socrates as a central character in many. Let's highlight some key texts and core concepts. Plato proposed that the tangible world is a mere shadow of a higher, immaterial realm of perfect forms, or ideas. For instance, all circular objects in our world derive their essence from the perfect form of circle, which exists beyond space and time. True knowledge is of these eternal forms, apprehended by the intellect, not the senses. Hence, the physical realm is transient, often misleading. Mathematical objects, like perfect triangles, never alter in our minds, embodying how forms remain constant beyond physical change. Plato's metaphor describes levels of reality and corresponding degrees of knowledge, from illusions and beliefs about sensible objects, lowest level, to intellectual reasoning and direct apprehension of the forms, highest level. As in the allegory of the cave in the Republic, imprisoned people see only shadows on a cave wall, mistaking them for reality. The philosopher escapes the cave, sees the real objects, forms, and returns to enlighten the prisoners, though they may resist. Plato's best-known dialogue on political philosophy. It explores justice, the structure of an ideal polis, and the role of philosopher kings, rulers guided by knowledge of the forms. Plato divides the soul into reason, spirit, and appetite, each virtue aligned with a part of the soul: wisdom, courage, temperance. Justice arises when these parts are in harmonious balance. Plato posits a supreme form, the good, that illuminates all other forms, analogous to the sun giving light in the visible world. Encountering the form of the good is the pinnacle of philosophical understanding, conferring ultimate coherence and meaning on reality. These ideas would echo through centuries of Western thought, informing Christian theology, medieval scholasticism, Renaissance humanism, and modern philosophy. Plato wasn't just an armchair philosopher. He experimented with bringing his political theories to life. Around 367 BCE, he traveled to Syracuse in Sicily, lured by the idea of educating the young ruler, Dionysius II, to become a philosopher king. Plato discovered that palace intrigue and the ruler's vanity were obstacles to genuine philosophical governance. The tyrannical environment clashed with Plato's vision of a rational, virtuous leader, eventually forcing him to leave under tense circumstances. These episodes in Syracuse deepened Plato's skepticism about the feasibility of a philosopher king in a flawed political landscape. Nonetheless, the experience informed later dialogues like The Statesman and The Laws, where he refined his political theories. Though Plato's attempt to craft a real-life philosopher king ended in frustration, it remains a fascinating story of philosophical idealism confronting political pragmatism, a reminder that bridging theory and practice can prove daunting. Plato returned to the Academy, devoting his remaining years to teaching and writing. He passed away around 348/347 BCE, leaving behind a legacy solidified through dialogues, over 25 surviving works, from the early Apology and Crito to the later Sophist, Statesman, and Laws. His most famous student, Aristotle, would become a monumental thinker in his own right. For many centuries, Plato's works were the cornerstone of philosophical education in the Mediterranean world and beyond. In late antiquity, philosophers like Plotinus further developed Plato's metaphysical ideas, integrating them with mystical thought. Early church fathers appropriated Platonic concepts, especially regarding the nature of the soul and the realm of ideal realities. From Descartes to Whitehead, many declared that all philosophy is a footnote to Plato, underscoring his enduring imprint. So, what have we discovered in this brief journey into Plato's life and work? He had an aristocratic, privileged upbringing, and his mentor-student relationship with Socrates set the stage for a lifetime devoted to understanding our place in the world and justice. Witnessing Socrates' trial galvanized Plato's quest to design a better polity, culminating in works like the Republic. His encounters with Pythagoreans and broader Mediterranean cultures enriched Plato's metaphysics and led to the founding of the Academy, which was a revolutionary and now legendary institution of learning. Plato's theory of forms tells us that a higher realm of perfect prototypes grounds the reality we experience. This text presents an emphasis on reason and dialectics, to grasp true knowledge as captured in the allegory of the cave and the divided line. Plato also posited the idea that society should be led by wisdom rather than mere opinion, and his travels and writings while in Syracuse illustrates the tension between this idealism and real-world power scenario. Through his dialogues in the Academy, Plato laid the intellectual bedrock for Western philosophy, influencing fields as diverse as ethics, politics, mathematics, and theology. His legacy is permeating every aspect of contemporary thought, and his contribution to us all is priceless.